Upon entering the realm of Shadow, you're going to come across multiple tough enemies and bosses that test you at every turn. This video here is going to be spoiler free, but you're going to run into some great weapons, ashes of war, incantations, and new spells too. In this video, we'll be covering some of the best and coolest options to try, with a heavy emphasis on both creativity and power. This is Matt, your average gamer, and welcome to my top 6 inventive and strong builds in Shadow of the Erdtree. This is going to be a really fun video. Before we get started, I want to mention that I put a lot of effort into giving these a lot of variety. They're going to be really enjoyable for you to use, a lot of good options, a lot of great damage from these ones too, and I've kept it all in the base game spoiler free. Now, in future videos coming up this weekend and further on, I'm going to start implementing some of the DLC bosses, particularly the early and mid game. With that said, this one will only have weapon spoilers, so basically no spoilers at all for this video. So if you haven't played Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, you can tune right into this one. This is my top 6 amazing builds. And at number 6 we have Freja's Greatsword. You could net yourself this Greatsword late in the DLC. It has high AR and in blood affinity, 132 bleed buildup with 45 arcane. This weapon is impressive on its own in both its looks and its cool curved sword moveset. The Ash of War we picked is the Poison Flower Blooms Twice, which helps us with rot buildup. The concept here for this high damage build is to use the Rot Flower Ash and proc Rot. With Kindred of Rot's Exaltation, you'll get 20% more generic damage. After that, you could follow up with your Sword in Blood to do massive charged attack damage. You'll also likely then proc Lord of Blood's Exaltation for even more damage, and you could posture break well with this curved greatsword too. I recommend trying this one out if you like rot builds. We have Freja's Blood Greatsword, and of course we have the Poison Flower Blooms Twice, Dragon Communion Seal. We did hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander for the weapon art, Kindred of Rot's Exaltation for the rot proc, Lord of Blood's Exaltation for the bleed procs, Axe Talisman for charged hits, and then we have the Spike Crack tier for charged hits, and the Faith tier to help us with buffs. A lot of people ask why I choose the Golden Vow incantation. It's still better than the new consumable, and it's better than the Ash of War, and it lasts a lot longer than both. We have 60 Vigor, 40 Strength, 45 Arcane here, 25 Faith with the Faith tier, and then for our buffs as mentioned, we are using Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength too. So with this one, you could also use the Dragon Communion Seal too with around 300 scaling. This is a versatile Rotten Blood build that's a lot of fun to use. It's a powerful Strength and Arcane build, and as you can see here, we're using the Ghost Flame Dragon ability for Frost build up. You can add that too for even more damage, and again, a lot of versatility here with this build. There's a lot you could do, ton of different status effects with this one. For the second build here, we have Messmer's Lost Knight, and we're going to be going heavy into the Fire and Inferno playstyle for this one. For our main weapon, we're picking the Backhand Blades, a weapon with an incredible Ash of War that dodges with a follow-up attack. We have these in Flame Art to take advantage of the B they get in our selected affinity. This gives us an AR of around 650, really impressive for the Backhand Blades given the fact that they're so light. The successive attacks and quite literal firepower here are amazing with the ability to run this as a versatile Faith build. Speaking of that, we've thrown in Messmer's Orb, which is a chargeable spell, or incantation rather, capable of doing massive fire damage. We have the Fire Knight Seal with this, which you can get in the Shadow Keep in the DLC by draining the water in the Church District. This is a great combination, allowing us to start with a powerful fire orb and follow up with extremely quick attacks that could take bosses down fast. We also have that incredible dodge move that makes boss fights a lot easier, and you're more than welcome to throw in other fire incantations that fit this build too. Now, pretty much all of these are really amazing to use, but this one's a lot of fun. The Backhand Blades are quite good. 650 AR in Flame Art with these stats is impressive. Let's jump into equipment. For equipment on this one, we have the Flame Art Backhand Blades, plus 25 preferably. We have the Fire Knight Seal. We did hit 51 poise, 70 actually. Shard of Alexander for the weapon art. Maleficent's Prosthesis to build up quick attacks. Fire Scorpion Charm for fire damage. Godfrey Icon for our chargeable incantations. Flame Tier for fire damage. Thorny Tier for successive attacks. For stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor. Of course, I recommend 60 Vigor for every DLC build for Shadow of the Erdtree because it's a challenging DLC. We have 22 Mind, 29 Endurance, 20 Dexterity. We have 70 Faith with the Faith tier. We are using Messmer's Orb and Fire Serpent to add on to the build, and then of course we're using Golden Vow as our buff, and we're also going to be using Flame Grant Me Strength too. And for the next build on here, we have the Ice Driller. We have a new sword, by the way, the Sword Lance. I love this one, which has an amazing gravity Ash of War. This Ash can do successive hits and builds up damage fast. More to the point, it can also build up status effects like Frost very quickly. This is an excellent cold build that can mix strength and intelligence. This is one that is also highly fun to use too, with an emphasis on fun and power like most of these builds. You can spin twice, which is amazing, and it has a decent amount of hyper armor on this one too. This is one of the most enjoyable Ashes of War I've ever used. Try this in Cold Affinity for the Frost procs and debuff, and you won't regret it. It was well worth the reward for taking down the tough boss to net this weapon. Yeah, this is perfect as a strength and intelligence build. I'm really enjoying the Sword Lance, by the way. It gives you a decent amount of frost build up too, which is impressive, and the AR on it is also quite good. I think it's actually one of the best, if not the best, thrusting weapon now. Heavy thrusting weapon, that is. Alright, in a second here, we're going to go over equipment stats for this awesome build, and one I definitely recommend trying out. This is really fun to use. I mean, check out this Ash of War. Some of the Ashes of War that we've gotten in the DLC are just so cool. Let's jump into equipment. We have the Cold Sword Lance with our cool gravity spin. We have any seal for buffs, so we hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander for the weapon art. We build up on successive attacks there. Ritual Swords Talisman as well for if you're at full HP, more damage. Thorny Tier for successive attacks, and then we have the Faith Tier for buffs. And for stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, 28 Endurance. We have 40 Strength where we're two-handing this. That's going to give us 60 Strength because you get that 1.5 times Strength bonus when you two-hand. We have 40 Intelligence and 25 Faith with the Faith tier. And of course, we're using Golden Vow to boost our damage by 15% and give us 15% defense too, so that's a plus there. And Flame grant me Strength, so we get 20% more physical damage. At number 3, we have the Holy Light build. There are some great holy options in the DLC, and one of them you get relatively late game. The incantation Light of Miquella is both fun and good for large bosses and enemies. This does a lot of damage if all of it hits, and is based off your faith stat. It does have a high faith requirement of 72 though, which is right on the edge of a rune level 150 build if you want to run a good sword build too. For the sword, we picked Leda's sword, another endgame weapon. This has Needle Piercer, which does some holy damage. The better part is the moveset, as some of the DLC's new weapons have incredible light and charge attacks options. Both of these combine together to make a viable dexterity and faith build, and certainly one you'll want to check out for good holy damage. By the way, compared to some of the other high faith requirement incantations, it's not going to do as much damage, but if you're running a holy build, this is a really fun one to use, especially against some of the bigger bosses in the game. And I'm going to take a second here real quick to tell you that if you've been this far into the video, if you've gotten to this point in the video, be sure to hit the subscribe button because you're not going to want to miss out on awesome, cool Elden Ring builds where we do a good amount of damage and we make a lot of fun stuff too. I'm going to work on making builds that are fun, unique, and powerful as well. We're also adding in Miquella's Ring of Light there as well. That does consistent holy damage, by the way, if it hits. Especially if you hit the dragons in the head, which take extra damage to the head. If it sits there for a while, it could stack up holy damage really fast. And last thing to mention while we're fighting this dragon here is, we did mention this earlier in the video, so I'm just going to do a reminder one more time. This upcoming weekend, I'm going to be adding in some of the early DLC bosses to my videos and whatnot. That'll be about 2 weeks since the time it's been out, so I think at that point, mostly everybody will have at least seen the early bosses in the DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. And be sure to comment what you want to see more of. I polled it recently, but we want to see more fun builds, more overpowered stuff, more broken stuff, or a combination of fun with decent power for versatility. We have latest sword +9. We're using the Erdtree seal for this build. It's a perfect fit. You can check out our armor set there. Sacred Scorpion Charm to boost holy damage. Ritual Sword Talisman to boost damage at full HP. Millicent's Prosthesis for the extra dexterity. Shard of Alexander for the weapon art. Holy Tier for the holy damage. And Faith Tier again for our build. For stats, we have 60 Vigor, 20 Mind, 24 Endurance. We have 35 Dexterity with Millicent's Prosthesis. We have 62 Faith. That gets us to that requirement of 72 for the big incantation we're using. We're using the Faith tier. And that is Light of Miquella, and then we're using Miquella's Ring of Light too. A lot of holy damage here. And then we're using Golden Vow as well as Howlish Rebury to boost the damage here. A cool Ash of War is one that you get from the Divine Beast, an early DLC boss. This can be put on a lot of weapons and can be boosted by the new Stomp Talisman as well as the Godfrey icon because it's also chargeable. For this build, though, we've used the Pata, if I'm saying that correctly, as a fast attack cold weapon. This gives us the ability to build up successive hits. The damage can add up quickly, and when you back off, you could use the Stomp again for more frost buildup and damage. And then when you back off, you could use that stomping ability. The big bonus that we've got here is that at a mid-range, we have our stomping ability, and up close, we have very quick weapons that can build up frost fast. That's the whole concept here, is to build up frost as quickly as you can, get the debuff, and then use the stomp too. For those that don't know what Frost does, when it procs, you get an additional 20% damage towards the boss's resistances. Now, it's not an exact 20%, but it goes against their resistances and basically will end up increasing your attack towards whatever boss you're facing after the Frost procs. We also have the Divine Beast Helm, which will increase some of your stats and honestly is hilarious to use. We have the Cold Peta with the Divine Beast Stomp there. We have any seal for buffs. We're using the Divine Beast Helm. Check out the armor set there. Shard of Alexander for the weapon art. Millicent's Prosthesis for quick attacks. Wing Sword Insignia for successive attacks too. We have the new Talisman for stomps. And then we have the Thorny Tear for successive hits. Faith Tear for buffs. And then we're using Market Shackle to stun the boss. Keep in mind, this Ash of War is also chargeable, so you can boost it by the Godfrey icon too. For the stats on this one, we have 60 Vigor, 23 Mind, we have 28 Endurance, 19 Strength, we have 79 Dexterity. Keep in mind we're getting extra points in towards Dexterity, I believe, and Strength from the Divine Beast Helm. 25 Faith with the Faith tier so we could use our buffs. And once again, my favorite buff, Golden Vow, we're going to use that for sure. And then Flame Grant Me Strength or Hellish Rebury if you have enough Faith for it. And the Ash of War here, as you can see, you could hold it down for the big stomp and a little more damage. It is chargeable, or you could quickly use it. But my recommendation is to use it a little bit more quickly and go for the frost buildup, as trying to get that long animation when you charge it can be a little bit difficult, especially against if you're facing faster bosses. It's really funny to use that with the Divine Beast Helm. That's cool. Kind of makes it look like the boss, which I think is just made up of two guys. I think they figured out it's just two guys in a suit. But anyways, for the last build, we've got the Fire Crossbow. This one utilizes the repeating fire ability for big fire damage, while also using the Bastard Sword in Flame Art. This gives us good AR on our sword, as well as a powerful ranged option. The Ash of War Flame Screwer that we're using is super powerful. This one's from the DLC. It allows for a thrusting hit and a follow-up attack that does pure fire damage. Add in the versatility this combination has, and you'll have a powerful build for close range and for distance. Boost as much fire damage as you can for this one, because ultimately that's the whole goal here. Get as much fire damage as you possibly can. And of course, we have the versatility once again as a Faith build, one of my favorite builds in the game. Well, at least having that variety of a Faith build and then fire damage being so cool. Alright, let's jump into equipment. We have the Repeating Crossbow, preferably plus 10. Flame Art, Bastard's Greatsword with Flame Screwer. We have the Flaming Bolts. We have any seal for buffs. We hit 51 poise. We have the Arrow Sting Talisman. We have the Arrow's Reach Talisman. We have the Ritual Swords Talisman. We have the Shard of Alexander, once again for our weapon art. Flame tier, again, we're boosting fire damage here. The Fire Scorpion Charm is good here as well. Faith tier, let's jump into stats. For our stats, we have 60 Vigor, we have 80 Faith with the Faith here, we have 28 Endurance, 22 Mind, 15 Dexterity, 16 Strength, so very low minimal requirements on the weapon, and then once you put that in Flame Art, it's going to scale with Faith. You're going to get a C in Faith scaling and some awesome base damage too. So that's the big benefit there, and also Sacred Affinity if you want to go for holy damage is another option there too. We're using Golden Vow and of course Flame Grant Me Strength as well. Thanks for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed my top 6 builds for both fun and power for Shadow of the Erdtree in Elden Ring. These will give you a good time and help you along your journey too. Be sure to sub for more Elden Ring content and join a great community full of incredible people. The Discord is in the pinned comment below, so be sure to check that out too. Catch you next time, and I hope everybody has an amazing day.